And we are live. What's going on? Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live. It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Saturday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And this is a new segment for the first row. What we will be talking about are financial matters. And so, really briefly, why I decided to start this particular segment is because I interact with a lot of people on a monthly, yearly, weekly, daily basis. And because of my interactions with them, sometimes those conversations that we have go into the area of finances. Sometimes people are looking for financial advice and people are trying to make decisions on which jobs to take. Other times it's just a matter of, hey, look, this is the money that I've come into, and I'm really looking to see how I can maximize its use. And not that I'm some financial guru. I don't, just because I'm doing this show, I don't want you to think I'm some financial guru, but I do have a certain structure that I utilize to keep my own finances in order, to keep my wife and I's finances in order, and to make sure that we're on track for our financial goals. So I decided to, instead of having these one-off conversations, or sometimes it feels like the same conversation over and over again, I decided to start recording some of this content and some of the things that I talk about when I'm having conversations with people in regards to their finances. So today on Financial Matters, and I still haven't decided the cadence of this yet, but today on Financial Matters, what we are going to be talking about is budgeting 101. And I titled this particular topic, How Are You Living? Because really our budget is an indicator of how we are living. Sometimes we're living recklessly. Other times we're living conservatively. Other times we're living in a nice little happy medium. I call it the baby bear complex, where we're living in a just right sweet spot for us. So I have tons and tons and tons of information that I want to share with you today in regards to budgeting. But I want to start, instead of just sharing, oh, here's how you create a budget, blah, 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 blah. I want to actually start with a couple of budgeting falsehoods. And really, it's not even just related to budgeting, but things that I've heard and things that I've been thinking about when it comes to how I've gotten to this space now, where my budget is, it keeps me on track versus where I was previously when I first started doing budgeting. So let's jump into a couple of falsehoods. Falsehood number one when it comes to budgeting: pay yourself first. Man, this is something that I thought that made sense. It makes sense. Hey, you get your money, pay yourself first, and then pay everybody else. That makes sense when you first start working because you don't have bills yet. However, a lot of us are not in a position when, by the time we sit down and start making a budget, to say, how can I pay myself first? If you look at the statistics, a lot of American households are actually at a negative on their budget. So that means that every month they're falling short somewhere and they're trying to shift the blocks around or shift the dollars around to pay everybody that they can pay so that they don't get the things that they have turned off. And in that, they're still doing entertainment, still buying some things that are not necessities. So pay yourself first. As great as it sounds, I put that as a falsehood, because if you don't have the money, if you're negative at the end of every month, you don't have the money to pay yourself first because you have already overextended yourself. So that's the first thing, but you can eventually get to paying yourself first. Falsehood number two is the fake it till you make it. Oh my goodness, fake it till you make it. That can be living in a house that you can't afford to make people think that you have money that you don't have, faking that until you can make the money. That is going to put you at a deficit. You can't fake your budget until you make it. You make your budget and it needs to be balanced. Unlike, and unfortunately, in our country where we have the ability to operate with credit and at a deficit, we have debt. The average American household can't afford to do that. And if they are doing that, if we're relying on debt to subsidize our budget, what ends up happening is we end up going further and further down the rabbit hole, and eventually that cycle breaks because we can't print our own money. Falsehood number three is robbing Peter to pay Paul. You cannot squeeze, what do they say? Water from a rock. I think that's the saying. You can't squeeze water from a rock. And so it's impossible to truly rob Peter to pay Paul, because guess what? If you rob Peter to pay Paul, you still owe Peter. So think about your electricity bill. If I say, okay, well, this month I know that I can't afford to pay the electric bill and I can't afford to pay rent. Obviously, you're going to have to make a decision. You're probably going to choose to pay rent. Now, the next month, that electricity bill is going to come due again, but the one that you didn't pay is also going to still be there. Now you're in this cycle of, okay, I'm going to just pay the past due. And I've been in this cycle before, the rob Peter to pay Paul cycle. I've been in this cycle before, but the problem was I was never ever able to pay the current electricity bill. So what that put me on was the edge of one emergency that requires me to now not pay the electric bill again. Now I'm at risk of my electricity being shut off. That's not something that you want to do if you're trying to set up a healthy budget. That's not something you want to do. Falsehood number 4 is I love this one. It's your parents' fault that you don't know about finances. Oh man, the blame-agize. If I would have it so right if only my parents. Let me tell you. At some point in life, it does not matter where you started. It matters where you want to go, and it matters that you do the actions that get you to where you want to go. Not everybody's household had somebody in it who taught them about budgeting. Actually, in the household that I grew up in, I wasn't so much taught about budgeting, I was taught about balancing. So my mother sat me down at the table, taught me how to balance a checkbook. And for those of you who don't know about balancing checkbooks, it's like taking every transaction on your ATM card and going through what you had when you started, going through all of those things and seeing how much money you have left. She showed me what it was to pay the mortgage. She showed me what it was to pay the grocery bills, to pay for the car note. She showed me those things, but those things were not, it didn't tell me what the budget was. It just told me how to balance the account. So I'm really good at balancing accounts. What I wasn't good initially at was budgeting, because what I would do is I would say, okay, my rent is $800 a month. And this is a long time ago, but my rent is $800 a month. And I would know that that was my rent. And then I wouldn't really calculate everything out in the sense of how much am I spending in groceries? How much am I spending in gas? What is my car insurance? I didn't calculate all that stuff out. I was just simply balancing my account. And guess what? Sometimes because I was just balancing my account was negative. And when your account is negative, obviously you didn't budget correctly. So again, falsehood number 4 is it's not your parents' fault that you don't know about finances. It may have initially been their fault because they didn't teach you it. However, we live in this world where there's this thing called the internet, and the internet has access to tons and tons and tons of information. And we're actually going to go over some of that information today. So at some point, if you're an adult, if you made it past, let's say past 25, and probably before 25, but if you've made it past 25, you can't keep blaming your parents for where you're at today. At some point, you're going to have to pick up your big boy and big girl pants, put them on, and say, hey, I need to get this budgeting thing down. So that's falsehood number 4. And I appreciate you guys coming in and joining us so early in the morning on the first row. Hey, what's going on, Casual? I see you in here. And then falsehood number 5, I only have one more after this. Falsehood number 5 is balancing an account is not a budget. Goes back to what I was saying about my mother teaching me how to balance my checkbook, but not teaching me about budgeting, how to actually set out, here's how many coins you're going to have this month. Here's the expenses that you have this month. Make sure you stay within the confines of those expenses and you'll be fine. Then the final falsehood that I'm going to go into, it's not the final one, but it's the last one that I want to talk about today, is a roommate does not fix poor spending habits. As we go over the information today, I'm going to slice the data in 2 different ways. I'm going to slice it where it's just an individual person who set their budget and they have a job. And then I'm going to slice it to where you have a roommate. The thing is that if you have poor spending habits, and I don't mean poor in the sense of like poverty, I just mean poor judgment in the sense of your spending habits. If you have poor spending habits, what happens is you can do things to alleviate pressure, i.e., you can get a roommate that'll help cut not your rent in half. But if you have a 1-bedroom apartment, you're probably going to get a 2-bedroom apartment. So your expenses will go up a little bit, but then you're splitting those with somebody else. So let's say I have a $1,000 rent on my apartment. I now need a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's going to cost me $1,500. So I'm not going to save $500 because I have a roommate. I'm going to actually save $250 because I have a roommate. The problem is that when we have roommates and we have poor spending habits, we see an influx of cash. And what do we do when we see an influx of cash? We save it. No, we spend it. We find different ways to spend the money, whether that's buying a new car or getting the latest J's or taking a guy or a girl out on a date. Like, we find different ways to spend the cash. And so it's not just about lowering your budget. It's about figuring out how to make better spending habit decisions. So those are the falsehoods that I wanted to get you like into right off the bat. The next thing I want to do is really just begin to show you how you can find information about budgeting anywhere on the internet. I actually already have an article up that I want to share with you and I want to go over with you today. What's going on, Brother Bruce? Let me bring that up. I guess I could have had this up and ready. My apologies. It's a window. Oh, it's telling. There we go. There we go. Now I got a window. I can share that window. I don't know if it's sharing on my screen. Let me check. Add to stream. There we go. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Right there. See, even if you can't see well, that should be big enough. Hopefully that's big enough for you. But this is an article that I picked up from Fidelity, and Fidelity is where I keep my personal investments at. But there's tons of information on Fidelity about, and you don't even have to have a Fidelity account to access this type of stuff. But there's tons of information on budgeting, investing, savings, retirement. There's tons of information on Fidelity alone, let alone the entirety of the internet, that you can consume for free. So you don't have to be an expert. And this is why I say it's not your parents' fault. You can't continue to blame them. That's a falsehood. They didn't teach me about finances. Well, Fidelity is not my parent, but they teach me about things that I'm interested in regarding money. So I want to go over this article. It says 7 steps to learn how to budget. Learn how tracking your expenses can help you reach your money goals. Key takeaways. A budget helps you understand your spending habits. Spending habits. Again, poor spending habits. Your budget will help you understand that because your budget will constantly leave you at a negative. It moves you closer to your money goals. To get the most out of budgeting, track your expenses and income consistently and completely. Setting reasonable expectations about your spending and savings will help you stick to your budget over time. I think that over time portion is a really important call out, is that when you first start budgeting, when I first started budgeting, I wasn't the best at it. I didn't always follow my budget. I didn't track my expenses consistently. I didn't track them completely. But over time, I've gotten better and better and better and better and better at it. And so now I'm able to quickly go in. If I do feel like, hey, I feel like my budget's spinning a little bit, let me take some time. Let me take a Saturday morning to go into the budget and see where I need to spend, what I have outstanding, what I haven't added into my budget yet. But I think that's a very big important point, is budget over time. Your budget this is an overtime process. It's going to be something that you progress into. Don't expect that if you haven't been budgeting for 20, 30, 40 years, that now all of a sudden you're going to get it right off the bat. Continuing on. Budgeting might seem daunting, but that's because it needs some better PR. A budget is simply a spending plan based on your income and expenses. Having a budget helps you understand where your money is going so that you can adjust it if you want to hit a goal. Here's how to budget for the first time and then keep going every month. This is not a one and done, not a one-trick pony. Number 1, find your why. If a budget can help you reach your money goals, then step 1 is to start a budget. Step 1 to starting a budget is defining a goal, or 2 or 3. Whether it's booking a dream vacation, buying a home, being debt-free, or just being able to afford more nights out with friends every month. Setting goals you care about can help motivate you to stick to a budget. Research says having a photo of your goal visible near where you're doing budgeting tasks can encourage you even more. Don't have a concrete goal yet? Taking control of your money is a good reason to start budgeting. When you think of something you want to accomplish later, you'll already be on the right track. Two, pick the right tool. You could create your own budgeting tracker by entering your monthly income and spending categories such as housing, transportation, healthcare, food, debt, gift cards, entertainment, personal care, and more. Or you could download many of the budgeting worksheets or apps available for free online. Remember, no tool is perfect. For example, you might have certain spending categories that a particular worksheet doesn't prompt you to list. Check out Fidelity's budgeting worksheet, which is fairly comprehensive. They already provided you a worksheet. Three, note your monthly income. If you have a predictable income, the next step is easy. Add up your paychecks over the month and plug it into your budget. If your income can vary from month to month, use the lower range of past monthly income. For instance, if your monthly take-home pay post-tax and other deductions ranges from $2,500 to $5,000, then create your budget as though you can only expect $2,500 each month. If you end up with more cash than you expect, you can save it. And don't forget about taxes. If you're a W-2 employee, what hits your bank account will likely be your take-home pay, as income tax is already deducted. But if you are a contractor or self-employed, what hits your bank account may be gross income, meaning untaxed. Make sure to set aside some of that gross income, as you will likely have to pay taxes on those dollars in the future. Number four, list your monthly expenses. A budget is only helpful if it's accurate. Make sure to account for all your expenses, even ones you think only amount to a few dollars. Forgetting a bunch of smaller expenses makes it harder to understand where your money went at the end of the month. If you use cash, keep your receipts, at least until you have a few monthly budgets under your belt. Same goes for paper checks. Make copies or jot down how much you spent and where. For credit and debit purchases, comb through your statements, including both one-off purchases and reoccurring charges, such as for streaming services and fitness apps. Examining your reoccurring charges in comparison to your other spending could help show you where your dollars are going. And don't forget to account for transactions on peer-to-peer payment platforms, Venmo, Cash App, all that stuff. Number five, aim for the right allocation. Once you've listed out your expenses, group them to high-level categories: essential expenses, retirement savings, and short-term savings. Fidelity's recommendation is to use the 50-15-5 guideline. 50% for essential expenses. Consider allocating no more than 50% of take-home pay to must-haves such as your mortgage or rent, utilities, groceries, and monthly debt payments. 15% for retirement savings. Try to save 15% of pre-tax income, including any employer contributions, for your retirement. 5% for short-term savings. Stash 5% of take-home pay in an account you can tap anytime for emergencies such as medical bills or car or home repairs. Use what's left over however you like. It might not be possible to adhere to the 50-15-5 right away, especially if you have a lot of debt, are out of work, or don't have an employer match to help you save for retirement. Here's how to balance debt savings and investing when money is tight. It could be tough to meet the 50-15-5 guideline if you're going through a big life moment that comes with extra expenses, such as planning a wedding or expanding your family. That's okay. In the meantime, it can still pay to look for ways to cut back to get as close as you can to the guideline. Fidelity's research shows that sticking to the 50-15-5 budget can help you maintain financial stability now and down the road. Number six, cut yourself some slack. A budget is supposed to make you aware of your spending habits, not make you miserable. Avoid shooting for unrealistic spending limits or monthly saving goals. Aiming for the unachievable could make you want to stop budgeting because it can feel useless. You're more likely to be successful with subtle nudges towards better spending habits than a radical shove in a new direction. So each month, tweak your estimated spending in a category or two to save more, or direct that money towards more pressing needs. For example, Say you want to cut down on your dining out expenses from 1,000 a month to 500 a month. Instead of immediately having it having that spending, try reducing it by $100 a month for the next 5 months. This could help you feel less stressed about the change and up the chances that you'll hit the goal. Repeat for another category once you feel good about the progress you've made. Number 7, this is the final one. Keep at it. Budgeting works best if you input your spending consistently. That's why when you're first figuring out how to budget, you may want to track your expenses as often as weekly. Longer term, consider setting a money date with yourself at the same time and day each week or month. Having an appointment may help you commit to getting the job done. To make budgeting less of a chore, pair it with something you enjoy, such as eating ice cream or having a favorite TV show on in the background. This gives you an immediate reward for your effort. If you allow yourself to eat ice cream and watch that show only when you're budgeting, you may be even more inclined to do the work. And don't forget to celebrate yourself. Whenever you hit a milestone, give yourself an extra special treat, which can encourage you to keep going. Just make sure you budget for it. That was a lot of information. Let me pull this down for a bit. That was a lot of information. But the highlights of that information for me are number one, first and foremost, is you got to figure out why you want to budget. And in figuring out why you want to budget, you're going to have to be honest with yourself, whether that's, hey, my spending is out of control. And this is why I started becoming more serious about my budget. My spending was out of control. And every time I got paid, before I could get my next paycheck, at some point my account was negative. That was every time. I can't even say it was like some of the times. It was pretty much every time my account was negative, overdrawn, because, oh, well, I'm now at the end of the pay period, 3 days to go, and it's not time to be paid yet, but I still have to go to work and I need gas for my car. And I don't want to just put the $5 that I have in my account, because that's not going to be enough to get me to work and back home for the next 3 days. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and spend $40 on gas, back when gas prices were that. Now it's like I'm going to go and spend $55, $60 on gas. I'm going to spend this money on gas, knowing that it's going to overdraw my account. So now this $40 of gas that I was supposed to have money for, instead of it costing me $40, now you add a overdraft fee on that, and that's another $25. The gas that I'm using for this 3-day period because of poor spending habits is now costing me over 50% more than what it was supposed to cost me. And I'm starting off my next check for my budget minus $65. This is why figuring out what your why is, for me, I was out of control of my spending habits, and I could not afford to do that with children, a family, a house note. I just couldn't afford to do that. And so I had to start getting serious about that. So my why for me was, do you really want to work for the rest of your life? Because if you're negative at the end of every check, that means there's no money left over to save. That means you're not going to have enough money to say, hey, I put my years in, it's time for me to retire. I know y'all see the gray. So if you see the gray, imagine this all being gray, and I'm like 88 years old and still have to work because of my poor spending habits over the course of my life. So for me, my why became, I had to get things in order, because at some point I want to say, hey, it's been real being an employee in this workforce. I've enjoyed the things that I've done in it, but I'm done doing those things. And now I'm just going to have a lifestyle that allows me to do the things that I want to do. So that was my why. Your why might be different. Your why might be, I'm planning for a wedding. Your why might be, I'm taking a trip or a vacation. Whatever your why is, just really be solid on what that is, and realize that over time that why may change. Once I retire, my why for my budget will not be, well, I want to make sure I can retire. No, because I am retired. Now it'll be like, well, I want to make sure I can travel while I'm retired. What does that budget look like? So it will evolve over time, but your why, if you have been off budget or off track in your spending and you find yourself living check to check, or worse, living from check to negative to check to negative, If that's where you find yourself at, just let your why be, I want to get on track because I know there's a less stressful way to live life than worrying about my budget 24/7. So, the other highlight that I want to bring out of that is picking the right tool. And they said there's tons of tools online. And I actually just grabbed a screenshot just to get a sample of a couple of the tools available for budgeting. I actually don't use any of these tools. I use a Google spreadsheet, a Google sheet that I track the budget on, and I do that because it allows my wife and I to share that and be able to go in and pay bills and mark them as paid, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But there's tons of tools that you can use, Google Sheets being one of them. But NerdWallet has a great tool. Moneyfi has been a pretty good tool, and then Money Lover is also another good budgeting tool. But there's tons of tools. You can go into your phone today. You can go into your laptop today and figure out which tool you want to use for budgeting. You can go to this article. Matter of fact, let me put this article in the chat for you guys. You can go to this article and select and grab the what they call it? Oh, I forgot the name of it. It's a Fidelity's budget worksheet, and that will be a place that you can print out a sheet of paper and start writing down what your expenses are. And it's sometimes helpful to write out your expenses first, so that way um, you can see what you actually have, because it never fails. When I sit with somebody and I'm helping them with their budget, we go over their budget and I say, okay, great, these are all the things that you've given me in your budget, is that everything? And they say, yeah, that's everything. um Sorry, I just realized I didn't take this back down. There you go. They'll say, yeah, that's everything, that's everything that I have. And so we'll start going into the budget and planning things, and then they'll say, "Oh, wait, I forgot." And it typically happens when you're like on a certain month when certain things happen that don't happen every month. Oh, I forgot. There's this. And so we'll go back and we put that in. And then we go again and we start. And then, oh, I forgot. There's this. And I'll say, hey, last chance. Is there anything else that you're forgetting? No, I think that's everything. And then they'll go down and they'll say, oh, I forgot. Having a space where you can write things out, even if in the first month of you starting your budget, all you're doing is writing out on the worksheet, okay, I had a rent payment, okay, the car note came out, okay, this came out. If that's all you're doing in the first month, even if you're not tracking the expenses, you're at least setting yourself up to where in the next month, when you start to track your expenses, you have the ability to track them and you know what is actually coming out. Really quick, I have from the chat, and I'll be bringing things in from the live chat as well. So if you have a question, feel free to ask while we're in the live chat. Casual says, I had to put most of my bills on auto pay. I forget to pay. Ooh, hey, we're going to touch base on that, but that's an amazing pro tip right there, or life hack is auto pay. I used to be like, I want them taking my money without asking me, because then they might take too much or they might not. Look, auto pay is like my best friend. And if I could show you our budget, my wife would not allow me to show you our budget if even if I asked her. I didn't, but if I did, she'd be like, no. But if I showed you our budget, you would probably see that probably 90% of my bills are on auto pay. Almost 90% of them auto pay. And if I could put more of them on auto pay, trust me, I would. There has to be a special circumstance in a bill for me to not do auto pay. Hey, what's going on, bro? So as far as the worksheet, if you can, again, in month one, before you even have a budget, sit down and just track what your expenses are, you'll be ahead of the game when it comes time to actually developing your budget. And so really, for me, that is like a budgeting tip number one, is really just being able to take inventory. I don't know if you've ever worked retail, but when I worked in retail at Blockbuster Video, we would have all these videos moving throughout the store, being checked out, being checked in, and all these different things. And there would come a time in the month where we would have people come in late at night and we'd have to scan every single video in the store. It's called taking inventory. That's the only way we knew what wasn't in the store that said it was in the store and what was in the store that said it was in the store. That was the only way, was by taking inventory. There's literally thousands of movies in the store at the time, and we're scanning individually each and every one. And if something doesn't scan, we pull it down and set it on the floor so that way we can come back to it and enter it in manually. That is what doing your budget is when you're taking inventory on your budget, you're scanning each and every expense that you have coming out for the month. So with that, let's jump into an actual tool. The tool that I use. This is a mock-up of the tool that I use when it comes to our budgeting. Let me add that. And I am going to maybe go like this. And I'm trying to make it big. So if somebody in the live chat can let me know if this is big enough or if I need to make it larger. Hopefully that's big enough. We'll see. Okay, my current window is too small, but whatever. So when it comes to budgeting, it's really simple. And it's funny because this sheet, I've been using this sheet for years, long before I read a Fidelity budgeting tips. But this sheet, I'm going to kind of go through the layout. I have a budget name. I have a job. It's my first payday is January 6th. I get paid biweekly. If I had a second job, that would go here. It would give me my first pay date and however I'm paid on the second job. But we're going to only go with one job really quick. I can see it larger if possible. Let me make it a little bit larger. Hopefully it'll go larger because I have some locking here in place. Yeah, I can't go that large. Let me see if I could go 175. 175. Oh, can't go 175. 150 it is. Sorry, brother Damien. But it has the budget name, my jobs, and then what it has here is my minimum check amount. Now, what you noticed in Fidelity, they said, hey, if you make anywhere from 2,500 a month to 5,000 a month, take your budget and build it off of the 2,500 a month. Now, I do my budgeting a little bit different, just a little bit different. Let's say I make $23 an hour. That's going to be 1840 gross pay before anything is taken out, about 1840 every check biweekly. Now, I reduce on average, and it's just an estimate, but on average, I reduce what my gross pay is by about 20%. That's about how much money I get to take home out of my check, is about 20%. And so if it's 20% that I'm taking out of my check, my minimum check is typically this amount. Now, the reality is my check might be like $1,500. It might be a little bit more than that. But I put what my minimum check is, and I look based on where I'm at. Fortunately, I'm a salary employee, so my checks are pretty consistent. Every once in a while, they'll fluctuate, but they're pretty consistent on the amount they are. But I take the lowest amount, and that becomes my minimum check amount. Now, in my actual budget, when I find out what the actual amount is, I enter that in on every single paycheck. But when I'm writing my budget for the year, I say, okay, this is roughly what I'm going to have for the year is every 2 weeks, I can expect 1472. Then out of this amount, I reduce that amount probably by about 80% and say, okay, great. Now I have 20% of my money that I get every single 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, 20% of that money I don't have to worry about budgeting for. I just need to make sure that I keep that cash on hand and stay within the confines of that cash. That eliminated a tracking method for me in my miscellaneous spending. I used to use cash. Now I'm really good at actually most of our bills come out of our joint account. And then I have my own personal checking account where my cash sits. So I always know where my miscellaneous cash is at. But with that, I create with a 20% reduction from what I'm bringing home, my take home, my net pay. I create what my budget is. So this is a budget where it's about a budget of $1,178 every 2 weeks. Now, when Fidelity talks about, I'm going to have to unfreeze some things. When Fidelity talks about freeze, no rows. There we go. Now I can scroll. When Fidelity talks about your bills, these are the bills that I have, and I have a toggle switch here that I created for if I had a roommate versus if I don't have a roommate. But these are the standard bills in a household. You got your rent, your groceries, your fuel when I say fuel for your car, your utilities, power, gas, electric. your internet bill, which is actually kind of a utility now, and your internet bill can be pretty expensive. Like, I know 150 sounds like a lot, but internet bills right now are ranging from about 80 to $126. I just put what mine is because we have gig internet because we work from the house. Um, then, if you're renting, you have your renter's insurance, just little things. And this is why Fidelity says include everything, because $20 doesn't seem like a whole lot. Well, it's just $20. I'm not worried about that. But when you have other small little $20 bills, all it takes is five of them to be $100 bill every month. So, renter's insurance, I put on this budget with the assumption that you don't have a car note, but we're going to add some things later to this budget. And you see the 525, that is the average car note, average used car note for households in America. So the average car note, and it's not far off because my last car payment for a new car was 525. So that we'll add that in later. But right now I'm going to say, hey, let's say you own your car and your car is working and doesn't have any breakdown issues. But even if you do own your car and don't have a car note, you do have this thing called car insurance. We all have typically a cell phone. And then I have some other bills that I want to add in here later. Now, on this particular tool, I'm actually going to move. So if you have something you want to say in the live chat, I'll kind of keep, you're going to see me kind of keep going over here like this. That's because I'm trying to look for the live chat. But on this tool, what I'm able to do is quickly see without even leaving this page, because all those bills are already on the spreadsheets for January through December. I don't need that. January through December. I can quickly see what my remaining budget is. Quickly. I quickly could see that, hey, $614, I'm short every month, $614. Now, here's the thing that begins to become frustrating about budgeting and about being overspent. That's why I said falsehood number one is pay yourself first. That becomes a little frustrating when you're already negative $614 in a month. And this is a very conservative budget, because there's tons of things that are not in here that I'm sure that you have, just like there's things in my budget that I have that are not on here. So then what happens is we say, okay, well, I have to contribute a little bit more money to the budget. Dang, that's not enough money either. So now what happens is we say, okay, well, I contributed every single thing that I have to the budget, and my budget is still negative on most months. Now, I do have these lovely 3 paycheck months where I get an influx of cash. And if I look at the year overall, my over that I have on my budget, I still have about $2,000 in my budget overall. But it requires these 3 paycheck months, and not every month is a 3 paycheck month. And since every month isn't a 3 paycheck month, what happens is I have to disperse this money over all of these months to make sure that the money's there. But I'm already negative and hit with fees in the first 2 months. So now this $2,000 that I could have at the end of the first, I guess at the end of the first year, is not really $2,000, because this also doesn't include any real entertainment in my life. Like, we do not live to work just to survive. Like, it's not, that's not the cycle that we're in, where it's okay, I work, I live, I make money, I pay the bills, I work, I live, I make money, I pay the bills. We actually want to have some sort of life along the way. Other than that, like Fidelity said, it just becomes this miserable existence that's like, well, what am I doing this for? I could just be broke and be unhappy versus working, being unhappy when I work, and then spending all the money on something else. So here's the challenge. Let's say, oh, well, what I'll do is I'll increase my tax exemptions. So you increase your money by a little bit. You increase your take home by, like, let's say $50. The problem is at the end of the year or the following year, when you file your taxes, that money has to be paid back. So you now created another bill that you already didn't have money for. The other thing that we will typically do is we'll say, well, I'll just I'll only spend what I need to spend. And for some reason, what we perceive as what we need to spend, or only what we need to spend, that number fluctuates quite a bit. Because if it was only what I needed to spend, if I only needed to spend money on shelter, food, electricity, My phone, even if I would say let's go without the phone, just shelter, electricity, my food, and clothing. Like if I just spent money on those things, I probably have a lot of money left over at the end of the month. The problem is that we again we tap into the internet, and I can't tell you a household that I know of that has access to the internet and then doesn't have 2 to 3 streaming platforms that they're interacting on. Think about when we were in COVID. When we were in COVID, I had every streaming platform except for YouTube uh Premium or Plus or whatever it's called. I had every streaming platform because I was sitting at home. And so imagine how my budget increased, but my going out, my eating out, my going to entertainment and concerts and comedy shows, all that stuff stopped. So there was an influx of money for to pull from in order to pay for those expenses. Now, here's where things begin to get tricky. We're going to go into an actual month. So we're in the month of January. And the way I look at my budget, I have a balance that I start with. I could even say, okay, great, let's start with the $26. Somehow I saved $26 to make sure that my budget was on point. Then, after I have that $26, at the end of the month, my budget is on point. Like, whoo, zero. That's a great number. And I might even say, okay, well, I made $1,500 on this check and $1,500 on this check. What? You mean I had $28 of miscellaneous cash to spend? I'm winning. Now, here's the problem. You see immediately in my first check, I am negative. And this is what I think causes struggles and stress in relationships for a lot of people is that we look at our budget as a month, but we don't always align that with our pay. And so, just right here alone, if I have rent that's $1,800 a month, and I'm only bringing home every 2 weeks $1,500, I'm not bringing in enough money to have rent sit or come out of one check. And so what happens is we okay, well, I gotta pay rent. So we pay rent. Now our account is already negative. What $300 we'll say our account is negative $300. I'm gonna make that $300. There we go. Our account is already negative $300. And because our account is negative $300, now we start getting our groceries overdraft, our fuel for our car overdraft, our utility bills that are going to get ready to come out overdraft, our internet overdraft, our renter's insurance overdraft. And so I say this to say that knowing when, not just that it's a monthly payment or a biweekly payment due date, knowing when your bills come out and being able to align them with your pay periods is crucial to your budgeting process. It's crucial because this is how crucial it is. I actually built formulas to be able to see when my paydays were, so I would know. I guess I could make that a little bit bigger so you can see 2023. There you go. To know when my paydays were and when I would have 3 check paid months. I guess that's 3 paycheck months. We'll call that that. Um, because rent's due on the first. If rent is due on the first, and I don't get my first check until the 6th, that means I can't pay rent with my first check. And so what I end up doing is I say, okay, well, rent has to start coming out in week number 2. It has to come out in week number 2 because if it doesn't, then I don't have enough money when it comes time for the first. Just by making that transition, all of a sudden I now have $752, but I am still negative $26. And so then you start having to pull from this little bit of extra money that you have. But the goal overall is to be able to say, hey, look, I want to put myself in a place to where I have a set spend of miscellaneous money. My wife and I both have a set spend out of every single check of miscellaneous money. Now, it doesn't mean we have to spend it, but we get it. And then if we want, we can save it and save it and save it and get bigger things with the money that we've saved from our miscellaneous money and never have to pull from our budget. But outside of that, when you start moving these bills around, you start saying, oh, well, also groceries is biweekly. I can't move that. I can't move fuel. But You know what? These bills are typically due around the first of the month as well. So I'm going to move that to the second. Now I have $1,000. Now, this is where if you a budget can't fix poor spending decisions. If you have $1,000 here that's not accounted for and you're not saving it and it's just gonna sit in your account, but every day you see it in your account, you're like, going and getting this $7 Starbucks, and it's not gonna make it, it's not gonna make a big dent. Let's just add some things in here. Starbucks. $7 because I went to Starbucks the other day and got a chai tea latte and it was $7. And we're gonna call that food. $7, and you're looking at the number in your account. I still got $995. I'm still good. Oh, you know what? That new Avatar came out. I'm gonna go and watch that because I don't want to just sit here and be bored because I don't have a streaming service. I just have the internet and I'm done watching short videos on Instagram and YouTube. So I'm gonna go to the movie theater. I'm gonna get me a ticket, but I'm gonna just get the ticket because these movie theaters prices have definitely gone up since I was a kid. So now I just got a ticket. Got me a ticket to the movies. Cool. That's just a simple entertainment. No harm, no foul. Where's my entertainment at? I think it's miscellaneous. There we go. Miscellaneous. That's just a simple entertainment. It ain't gonna hurt nobody. That's what I'm doing. Okay, cool. Got that. And what happens is we chip and we chip and we chip away. You know what? I'm feeling snacky. You know what I want? I want some ice cream from Cold Stone because I want a tip. I don't want them to think I'm cheap. Cheap. I want them to think I have it. And before we know it, these little things where we still had money begin to balloon our deficit in our budget because we didn't have the money. It just happened to be sitting there waiting to transition to what it was actually for. So one of the things that I've done actually with one of our rentals, what we do is we pay our mortgage biweekly. So you get paid, half of the mortgage comes out. You get paid again, half of the mortgage comes out. If you have a 3 paycheck month, half of the mortgage comes out of the third check. That biweekly payment allows us to say, okay, instead of me having this, I'm going to make some numbers hard here. Instead of me having this $1,800 payment, I now have this $900 payment. And again, I have rent, a $900 payment in the first week. Now I can see, oh, I don't have $1,000. I got $65. And let's take these out really quick. I'll add them back in a second. And I'm sorry, I have $102. And when I get paid again, I'm going to be negative $26. Now this number becomes a little more manageable. But when we see $1,000 in our account and we have poor spending habits, and I say this from experience, not from judgment, when we have $1,000 in our account and we have poor spending habits, we will typically spend up anywhere from, I would say, 25 to 30% of that money. And $1,000, that's $300 that you're spending up kind of mindlessly over the course of 14 days. And it's really easy to do, especially if you have like Amazon on your phone. You can, oh, I kind of want that because it's nice to when you feel like you're struggling and it feels like you're only working and there's no real monetary reward for you. It's nice to have presents, Amazon presents show up at your door regularly. Oh man, I got this new thing. You don't even need it, but you get it because it's like it makes me feel better about this experience of work to live. It makes me feel better. But then it also creates pressure on the experience of work to live. So what we do is we spend, and this continues to balloon and balloon and balloon. And no matter if you didn't split your money, you spend a lot more than what you would because if you've already spent $900 on your rent and you only have $100, you'll quickly see, oh well, I'm at zero now. So it's better to be at zero and have a $100 deficit or $120 deficit in this case, $128 deficit in this case. I'm sorry, than to actually just spend and spend and spend and then find out in the next check that you're short 300. And trust me, again, I've been here. I've had to make phone calls. People like, yo, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage. I need help. Can you help me? Like that's a sobering place to be in. I remember at one point I went outside to go to work and my car was gone. Why? Because I was playing that rob Peter, pay Paul fallacy where you could rob Peter over here, pay for other things, and then be a little bit behind on your car note. And then finally something bites you. And they're like, hey, yo, we're not playing with you anymore. We're coming to get your car. And if you want it back, now you got to pay all these additional fees to get it back and catch everything back up. So when I tell you I'm not coming from a place of judgment, I mean this wholeheartedly. And I'm willing to have this conversation openly, transparently, because where I am today is not where I was back then. And where I am today, I don't foresee me going back to where I was back then because now I understand that there's a greater cost for the things that you think you're getting in the now than what they actually cost right now, especially when your budget is negative. So what we do, and you'll see this over here, this is over here tracking where we're at for the entire year. But I'm going to actually reset this, excuse me, to what it was initially. We could talk about the roommate situation. Did I get that? Did I get that? Yes, yes. And these need to go. Boom. Sorry, I'm a stickler for these things. All right. Now I'm back to my negative $26 budget. So what we say is, you know what? I can't afford to live on my own. I'm gonna need a roommate. And so what we do is we get a roommate and we say, cool, I'm gonna get me a roommate. And you'll notice again, remember I said the cost of living doesn't the cost of rent goes up because now you're not in that one bedroom apartment that I was forecasting. Now you're in a two-bedroom apartment, but you're splitting that cost. So you're able to save about $700 just on your rent alone. Then things like your grocery bill could, if you have a roommate who's considerate enough, you could go halves on the groceries and be okay. Not always the case, but well, maybe you're lucky. I don't know, maybe. Um, but then you have things like your fuel that stays the same, but you split utilities. And overall, that negative $26 budget turns into $1,000 windfall. And remember, I said a budget is not going to fix poor spending decisions. It's not. It just is not designed to do that. It's designed to highlight poor spending decisions, but fixing poor spending decisions comes from another place. It comes from another source of work, another source of fuel. So what happens is we say, okay, cool. I got a roommate now. I got $1,000 a month. You can do a lot with $1,000 a month, but instead of simply saying I'm going to limit myself to 20% of my net income, we still keep our budget at 100%. We're still spending everything that we get in our check somehow, some way. And this $1,000 that we're supposed to have, we start looking at what we can do. I'm tired of my car. It's kind of old. Ladies is not really feeling me driving around in the 2002. So I'm trying to get me a 2023. And well, I can't afford 2023 because that's a $700 car payment. So I'm gonna get me a used 2020. And what we do is we say, let's go ahead and add that to the budget. And immediately we start slicing in. And then we say, you know what? This cell phone is always buggy. Now all of a sudden our cell phone bothers us. I don't even remember how long I've had this cell phone, but I would wager that I've had this cell phone since 2018. I would wager that I've had it since 2018. Here we are in 2023, and they have tried and tried and tried to get me to get a new cell phone. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. My phone still works. It even, when I shook it, it rattled a little bit. But guess what? It still works. It still gets the job done. And so I'm good. I'm not going to add an additional expense because at the end of the day, the phone does what I needed to do, be a phone. But, in our newfound windfall of cash, we say, you know what? I'm going to get me the new iPhone. But I'm not going to just pay for it because that's stupid. I'm not going to pay for it. I'm gonna pay for it over 24 months. So we increase our monthly by another $50 a month. Then we start. I'm not going to do credit cards. We say, we can't be here and hanging out and not at least have two streaming services. So we'll split that bill too. Then we say, I finally have some room to have some entertainment, and I'm gonna put $100 into my entertainment. That's not even monthly, that's bi-weekly. But I'm gonna put it as 200 now because if I don't, my calculation will be off about my numbers. And then lastly, we say, I'm gonna save some, because I know saving is important. I'm gonna save some, and we save some money. And now our budget, we have $169 to do all the other things that we didn't account for in here. We have $169. And what typically happens, this is what typically happens, is our entertainment is higher than what we anticipate. And when I say higher, it's sometimes it's not even just 100% higher, or it's not 100% more. It's 200% more. Meaning we were going to spend $200, but we ended up spending $600. Why? Oh, because the homie said they were going to Vegas, so I got to get my ticket. I need to be there. We gonna ball out. Mm-mm, mm-mm. So it ends up being more, but we gonna be conservative and just say we spent $200 more because we had money. And it's interesting, we had money and we didn't opt to save more money. We just decided to spend more money. And what that does is it creates, typically, when you're negative, in order to avoid the negative, you'll say, I'll just use my credit card. And now you got a credit card bill that you got to pay that you've already spent some of this money on. So even if I move this to 360, I still have a credit card and I'm still negative. I can move it down another $32. So 328. Now I got $1 in my budget. Again, the problem is that our poor spending decisions are going to eventually bite us. Eventually, what will happen, and this has happened to me where I've had creditors calling me, credit cards closed, all kinds of things, is we say, oh yeah, I'm gonna pay my card off every month because I don't want to pay interest. And we pay our card off every month. Um, or we make sure we make all the payments that would accrue interest every month, but we typically will pay our card off every month. But then you get, oh, well, I can't afford to pay it off, so I'm gonna just do the minimum. I remember I got a credit card when I was 17 years old. I don't know why these people gave me a credit card, but they gave me a credit card at 17 years old. And my credit limit was $700. And the first thing that I went out and bought was like a video game system. I can't even remember which video game. That's how sad that is. I can't even remember which video game system was out at the time that I purchased, but I remember purchasing one. And I remember being like, yeah, I got it. And I remember walking around the mall, doing everything that I could do to just stunt, but not stunt. Like, oh, if I want something from Cinnabon, I can get it. Like you're at 17, you're a kid. You're not the sharpest pencil in the box by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm running around and buying all these things that really are just expenses that I don't have the money for. And then the bill comes in. And it's like, oh, you can make your minimum payment $25. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make that minimum payment. Not realizing I was just looking at a credit card statement that my wife and I received, and it was like, I forget what the balance was. Let's say the balance was $2,000 on the credit card. It was like the credit card balance is $2,000, and you can make a minimum payment of $25 a month. And then it tells underneath, which it didn't say this back in the day, but it does now. It says underneath that if you pay the minimum payment in 13 years, you will pay off this balance, and it will cost you like 5,000 something dollars. And that's only probably because our credit card is on a 0% interest right now. But it'll cost you X amount of money in 13 years when you pay it off. Yeah, $700 over over $25 payments, you're not paying that balance off as fast as you think you are. And what ends up happening is eventually something happens to where there's an emergency, but your card is so tapped that you can't use your card to pay for the emergency. Your card is so tapped that even though you have some availability on there, you're going to pay like, well, here, put $125 on this credit card. And then what I'll do is I'll pay the cash out of the rest. Well, if this is the habits that you've been practicing, because as Les Brown would say, practice doesn't make us perfect, it simply makes us better. If these are the habits that you've been practicing, you've become really good at these habits. And now that emergency comes up, and I actually have to go in here, we're going to call it any kind of emergency, medical, car, whatever. Emergency. You have a $100 emergency that comes up. If I can get my thing, there we go. Miscellaneous. I think I may have even had emergency. No, I didn't have emergency. Miscellaneous emergency that comes up. And now you're back to being negative, and your cycle starts all over again. And what ends up happening is now you don't have the money to pay your credit card. Because I'm telling you, for some reason, credit card payments are the first things people stop paying when their budget comes under pressure or when their budget is negative. Credit card payments. So you stop paying your credit card payments, which has we'll have another financial matters on credit, but it has a financial impact on your credit and your ability to borrow money. So now you have to borrow at a higher interest rate when you do borrow money, if you can find somebody who will loan you money. And then eventually your credit card is closed. The balance doesn't go away, but your credit card is closed. I remember at one point I had a K Jewelers bill, and I think I don't remember how much I owed, but they were like, can you make a payment of $65 today in order to avoid your account being closed? And I was just like, I'm sorry, don't. You could say, can you make a payment of $20 today? And the answer is no, I just don't have it. And that was because, again, of those poor decisions that I was making and not really taking inventory when you're buying a piece of jewelry that, hey, I'm not in the space to be buying this jewelry, because though I might be able to afford the $65 payment today, I don't remember what the payment was, but the $65 payment today, my budget is really tight and I don't need to create additional pressure on that budget. Today, my budget, I was doing the math, I think, of my total gross income, not even my net income, of my total gross income, um, I end up saving about 45% of that income, saving it. 45% of my gross income. That means the other 55% takes care of taxes, takes care of miscellaneous money, takes care of saving for our household, takes care of saving for my personal account, takes care of any trips that I want to do. Like, the rest of the 55% takes care of all of those things. 45% is just stacked to the side in different vehicles. Number one, because I understand my why. My why is I want to retire and I don't want to work forever. And according to what I make right now, I don't know of a retirement vehicle right now that can provide me that level of income. So, since I don't know there's a retirement vehicle that can provide me that level of income, I'm making sure the means of my budget are within the vehicle that I could foresee for myself in retirement right now. Even though I could probably live a much more extravagant lifestyle, I'm choosing now to sacrifice that extravagance, that luxury. I'm choosing to sacrifice that for the sake of having comfort and not having to work. Because if all I did was practice the extravagant lifestyle when I retired, do you really think I'm going to be like, well, yeah, now I don't need the Bentley. No, I need the Bentley just dropped their latest model, two-door coupe. I need that. Mm-mm, mm-mm. I've had the same car for almost 10 years now. In April, it'll be 10 years that I've owned my car. And if God willing, I will keep that bad boy for another 5. If I can, I'll keep it for another 10, because it affords me an ability to not have to spend $525 a month. And I have the option of saving that money. So when I do need to get another car, if I want, I can go in and pay for that car cash. Here's the thing, I ain't buying a brand new car, or I played that game. Not interested in that game. But I can go in and buy a brand new, to me, used car cash and not have to spend, if it's $20,000, not have to spend $30,000 over the life of a loan. This is what budgeting allows us to do. And there's so much more. I didn't realize that an hour went by that fast. There's so much more we can tap into in regarding budget. But overall, the key takeaways I want you to take away from today are simply that a budget is not going to fix your poor spending decisions, poor spending habits. Um, your estimates on how much you spend are just that, estimates. And if it's based on how you feel, you may not feel like you spent a lot of money. I didn't feel, well, I did feel like spending $7 on a chai tea latte was like, dang, that was $7 for a cup of coffee. Like, I can't afford to do that. But it may not feel like a lot to you on that one day. But when you're doing that 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, that's $140 that you spend on chai tea lattes, if that's what you drink or whatever you drink. But it's $140 a month. That's a lot of money for a lot of people's budgets. Just going down this budget right here, we got $1 left over a month. You add 140 to that, you're negative $139, not including the ATM, or not the ATM fees, the bank overdraft fees. And so when it comes to setting up your budget, I want to leave you with this. Let me pull my screen share down. Boop, there we go. Hello again. When it comes to setting your budget, there's some key things that I want you to remember. And the budgeting tool takeaway tip number 1 is take an inventory, because what we feel like we're spending and what we are actually spending can be two completely different things. And you don't want to get into this space where you're balancing your account, finding out you're negative, versus actually understanding that, hey, this is going to be a tight month for us. We're not going to be able to eat fast food. We're going to have to cook from home. You can set up a better strategy when you understand your budget at the beginning of the month than looking at your budget at the end of the month when everything is already said and done. It's too late to make a difference then. So take inventory. Again, you can go to that Fidelity. The link is in the live chat. You can go to that Fidelity website and pull their worksheet. You can go and create a spreadsheet and just document what it is on Google Sheets. Or you can look at another tool, or you can download one of the budgeting apps that I shared in the beginning of the show. Budgeting tip number 2 is the money needs to be available prior to the bill being due. If the money is not there, you can't pay the bill. If you can't pay the bill, you try to pay the bill, you're either going to bounce your check or bounce your account, where it says, okay, great, the bill was paid, you paid it on time. We didn't receive payment because they said you didn't have funds. Now, what's going to happen is your bank is going to charge you an overdraft fee. And I'm telling you this from experience. Your bank is going to charge you an overdraft fee, and that company is going to charge you a return check fee. And then you're still going to have to pay the bill. And that company also might charge you a late fee on top of that. So now you have 3 additional fees because the money wasn't there by the due date. And when I used to receive paper checks, I now only receive direct deposit. But let's go back. Even with direct deposit, you never know what can happen with your check. I actually had set up a direct deposit where I did not input one of the account numbers on the account. And I'm like sitting and waiting for the money to go into the account. I'm like, yo, I got all my other money. Where's this money at? And so I call and check everything out. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's the wrong account number. We got to wait until that bounces back as not received by your bank. Then after it's not received by your bank, then we got to draft a check, send that check to you in the mail, and then you got to deposit that check. Now, imagine if I was like, oh, well, this bill was due 3 days ago and I was expecting that money to come in for it. Fortunately, it was one of my savings direct deposits. But if it wasn't, I'd be like, oh, man, well, that bill was due three days ago. What am I going to do now? If it's rent, oh, you're going to get a pay or quit. You're going to 3-day pay or quit. Either you're going to pay us or you're going to get out. That's rent. You're going to get evicted. Then it's going to even be harder to get a place to live in. But if it's even another bill, let's say if you plan the rob Peter to pay Paul and it's your power bill. Oh man, I had to pay it by today and now I don't have the money for it. And my account is probably already overdrawn because I didn't have the money for last paycheck or last paycheck either for a bunch of things that I had. So that's the other thing is the money needs to be available prior to the bill due date. If it's not, you're setting yourself up for anything to happen that can be outside of your control or inside of your control, self-sabotage or external sabotage, we'll call it, to derail your budget. And then tip number 3 is that think through adding to your overhead. It might sound great. Like there's been times for me where I've been like, man, I gotta go and take my car to the shop. I gotta go and get it fixed. I've had conversations with people who are like, man, you guys need more than one car in your household. You should get another car. But we constantly are thinking through what we add to the overhead or we're adding to the overhead of our budget and bringing in a car payment, even if the car payment was $300 a month, bringing that in just doesn't make sense for the sake of saying, oh, we have 2 cars. Because also, when you bring in a second car, you increase your auto insurance premium. And I'm not interested in increasing our auto insurance premium either. So, whenever you're going to add something to your budget, and this is really good when you first start budget, like even your miscellaneous expenses, like, hey, I'm thinking about stopping by Starbucks. Think about what that adds to your budget. Think about how many times you've already stopped by Starbucks this check. Oh, this be my 4th or 5th time stopping by Starbucks. I'm averaging $10. That's $50. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to not stop at Starbucks if that's what you choose to spend your money on, but think about what overhead you're adding to it. And that's the the niceties of adding to your budget. Also think about those long-term things that you're committing to, whether it's getting a new TV, buying a new wardrobe. My wife will tell you I am extremely frugal when it comes to buying clothes. A lot of the clothes, I mean, I still have shirts from when I don't wear them, but they're sentimental now. But just to kind of give you an example, I still have this shirt, one of the shirts that I had. It's a Dragon Ball Z shirt that I bought when my oldest, who is now getting ready to be 21 years old, was born. Still have that shirt. Still have it. I have clothes that I keep from anywhere from like 5 to 7 to 8 years. Why? Because I'm not really into like the latest and greatest fashion. It doesn't move me that way to be involved in that. But I'm always thinking about, unless I'm like going on a trip or something like that where I've planned to spend money on clothes, I'm thinking about, well, what would it be to have a clothes budget like $200 a month, $400 a month? Why would I want to include that in my budget? Or even worse, long term, the rent a center mentality. I can't afford to buy it, but I want it right now, and my credit is not good enough for me to go and get out and buy it on credit. Which, if you don't have to buy something on credit, don't buy it on credit. Um, but I want it now, so I'm going to rent it. Never own it. Rent it for like 100% of the cost, or not. I'm sorry, 200% of the cost. I'm going to rent it. Think about what that does what that does adding to your overhead. And if you're comfortable adding something to your overhead that you might need to acquire a debt for, see how long you can actually save to pay for that. You can easily find out. I mean, there's tons of interest calculators out there. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24% interest rate on a credit card. You can easily enter that into a calculator and say, I want to buy this $1,500 TV. How much would I need to pay that off in 12 months? And it'll tell you how much you need to pay it off in 12 months. And if you can save that for 12 months, you might have enough. You might, well, actually, you won't, might, you'll have more than enough to pay for it cash and have money left over. Pay yourself the interest. Don't pay somebody else the interest if you don't have to. And so the last thing I want to bring to every budget, I think, is when you get there. Hey, what's going on? Because when you get there in your budget is you the cost of living is constantly going up. And if you're working in an industry where you get raises, not all industries have raises, but if you're working in an industry where you get raises, it can be easy to feel like because the cost of living is going up, you're never in a position to save. But I would challenge you, and this is something that I've had to do. This is why I'm now looking at me like, wow, that's how I got to 45% of my income being saved in a check. Every time you get a raise, instead of spending it, if your budget is still sitting fairly neutral, I know eggs are like 8.99 for a dozen, but if your budget is still sitting fairly neutral, then instead of adding that money into your budget, simply say it's going to be saved. Now, if you need to put your savings in your budget, do that. I don't put my savings in my budget because my savings comes directly out of my check. I do not see the savings that I save. It literally doesn't even come into my miscellaneous account. It doesn't go into the joint account. It goes to they go to their own savings accounts. And so anytime you get a pay raise, I don't care if it's 50 cents, I don't care if it's 25 cents. You'll be able to see, because if you've been tracking your budget for a year, you'll be able to see, oh, I'm bringing in $14 more a check. I'm bringing in $25 more a check. Set up a savings account and direct deposit that immediately. Your first one is your reward. Hey, congratulations. You got $25 extra that you can do whatever you want to do. But now that you know it's $25 extra, direct deposit to your savings. And you'd be surprised, $50, even $25 a check, if you're only paid twice a month, that's $50 a month, $600 a year. A lot of people do not have $600 in their account that they can go to, that's not allocated to anything, that's not dipping into something that they need it for as far as like retirement. A lot of people don't have that type of break glass emergency fund. I actually am to the place now where my miscellaneous money that I can spend on whatever I want, it adds up faster than I get paid. So my miscellaneous is constantly growing and growing and growing and growing. Why? Because I've been able to, through budgeting, change my poor decision making into good decision making. Hey, it costs, I don't know, $45 to go out and eat a decent meal for my wife and I. I'm not talking about a five-star restaurant. I'm just talking a decent meal, not fast food. $45 for us to go out and eat. Why would I stop and do that when I have thawed out chicken breast in the refrigerator? I got some summer squash and I have some rice that I can make. The other day when we were leaving the gym, my wife was like, I'm hungry, babe. Where are we going to go? I said, I'll make us some dinner when we get home. And that's exactly what I made. And that's exactly what we ate. And it was great. And you know what? It didn't cost me $45 because it was within my grocery budget already. And we had already spent money on that. We didn't spend additional money, so we didn't have to add that. And I'm now to the place where with my credit card, because I felt like my spending was beginning to start that spin with credit card, like, oh, because I'm good at paying the credit card off. Oh, well, I'm going to get this fast food. I'm going to get this, going to get this. And I'm using the credit card. And then I have to go back in and make those payments with my personal account. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to use my personal account. The points ain't worth it. I don't care. I don't want to be in a habit of spending that money and then having to go into my account. I'd rather know I got $200 left in my personal account, and that's all I can spend until my money comes back up in the next 2 weeks. I'd rather know that than to be spending with my credit card and then be like, oh, well, I spent 300. Okay, well, I'm going to give 200 here, and then I'm going to give 100 there. That begins that habit of poor decision making because I'm not tracking my spending. So I really hope you guys gained a lot of value out of this. I'm going to actually drop an email in the comments if I can find them. There we go. Contact. Ooh, you ever forget your email? Because I surely just forgot mine. 1 second. I will get you the email though. Okay, yeah, that's the email. Contact at firstrow.com. If you are interested in this particular budget sheet that I shared today, it's just a spreadsheet. Anybody can make a spreadsheet, but if you're interested in it, feel free to send me an email at contact@firstrow.com. And I will send a copy of this particular spreadsheet to you. Again, that's this spreadsheet right here, to where you can put your information in. I don't have any instructions that go on it, so I really hope you paid attention. Your name goes here, your job goes here, how you're paid goes here. There's some other things that are hidden over here that you can unlock, but they all have their own titles, and you'll be able to see what they are. But really be looking at the fact that as quickly as Q2, which is the beginning of April, you could actually have your budget on track. I know it feels overwhelming in the beginning, and honestly, it feels tedious in probably the first 2 months when you're sitting there tracking everything you're spending money on. You're like, man, I'm gonna stop tracking this fast food. There's just too many entries of it. Well, that's an indicator that maybe you're eating out too often, and that is definitely something you should be tracking, because $20 here, $20 there doesn't feel like a lot. But if you've eaten out 20 times at $20, that's $400 that you've spent on fast food on top of your groceries that you're eating. So I'm happy to send this to you. You can put in what your minimum check amount is here. You can put in the amount that you want to allocate to your budget here, or you can toggle it here, however you want to do it. But however you do it, it doesn't matter whether you use this tool or another tool or the tool doesn't matter. What matters is that you get started. And really, Budgeting 101 Day is about you getting started looking at your life in the sense of how you spend money, where you spend money, and really bringing some controls into that. You might put all your inventory together and find that you are overextended to the extreme. Like, man, I am $5,000 negative a month. That's fine. That's where you're at today. How are you going to work to fix that? What are some of those things you can start to dial back on? There was a point where we had to do debt consolidation because we were so overly extended that it was like, yo, I can't even afford the minimum payments of all these cards combined. It's just too much. So we had to consolidate everything to a payment that we could afford. And then we had to stay consistent and diligent for 4 years, paying that off. Wherever you're at today is fine. Don't beat yourself up. Remember that falsehood, my parents didn't teach me finances. Today is the last day you can use that excuse. Tomorrow is where we expect you to use the resources available to you. It's the expectation I have of myself. And because of that, I'm now in a much better financial position than I was, even 5 years ago. But it's been that dedication, that determination, that grit to do the work that has gotten me to where I am today. And I want each and every one of you to believe that regardless of where your budget is at, you can be in a healthy budgeting situation for yourself, for your family. And there's a ton of other benefits that come when your budget is not creating pressure on your life. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you have enjoyed this first segment of Financial Matters with Billy Rowe on how are you living Budgeting 101. I don't know when the next Financial Matters will be, but what I will say is if you like this video, share it. And don't only share it, I'm going to need some feedback, because if it doesn't resonate with you guys and it's not speaking to you, I'm happy to not do it again. But if it is resonating with you and it's something that you feel like will be helpful, please let me know. And I'm happy to continue to develop content along this financial line. But other than that, again, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. Happy to engage with you in the live chat. If you're watching via the replay, happy to engage with you in the comments for the first 7 days that this is up. After that, I move on to the next content. But until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.